This is Scale Her Up, the podcast for female-led businesses ready to grow to 7 figures and beyond. I'm Dr. Brenda Hector, business coach and champion for women in business, on a mission to change the statistics and help more women scale successfully. Each episode, we share real stories, tools, and tactics that help you build a business that supports the life you want. Follow the show and come join our Scale Her Up Facebook community. You don't have to do this on your own. So today I've got Jen Landels, who's the Managing Director of Studio LR, with me on the show. Jen, thank you very much for joining me.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Let's start, as I do with all of the guests. Tell me about the business. What do you do at Studio LR?
So Studio LR is an independent creative agency. So we're based in Leith in Edinburgh. We help ambitious organisations build brands, campaigns, and what we talk about is we do it with both substance and standout. So we refer to ourselves as the Gutsy creative agency. So we've been around for 22 years. So work across sectors like drinks, tourism, heritage and finance. And we've got clients ranging from Volvo to Suntory Global Spirits to Historic Environment Scotland to St James Quarter. As I say, we call ourselves the Gutsy Creative Agency because what we do is it's about getting into the guts of an organisation through sort of strategy and workshops and understanding and uncovering what genuinely makes it different and then bringing that to life in a way that helps it stand out and be remembered.
So you're helping your clients to be gutsy as well.
We are indeed. And those are our favourite type of clients, is the clients who are ready to be bold, to be gutsy. And obviously that is always done with a degree of measure. It's never done for kind of fame's sake. It's done to make sure that they are really understanding what their USP is, what they can talk about. And also a lot of the stuff that we do, when we do have a project that goes through the research side of things, what we will do is we will do workshops, we will speak to the stakeholders, we'll speak to the staff, we'll speak to the customers to really understand and also do that desk research so that you can understand exactly what it is that our clients' businesses are about. And making sure, one of my favorite phrases when we're doing that kind of planning strategy stage is giving people a damn good listening to and really understanding what the kind of problems and the challenges and those little nuggets of insights are, because that can really help you when you come to doing that kind of standout campaign.
I love that. A damn good listening to. I guess let's talk about, for anybody that's listening, the audience is businesses. And how do people get it wrong? When people are getting their message out there, what is it that they do wrong? What do they need to be aware of?
I think there's quite a few kind of different things that could be made better. I am very lucky. I work alongside a guy called Dave King, who's the Director of Strategy and Creative. And I have worked with some phenomenal people across my career, but he is definitely standout for me as far as you watch him in brand workshops or along with clients and you're like, wow, okay, yeah. And I think one of the things he talks about a lot is when brands do what is the trendy and cool thing to do right now. And he actually did a webinar last year where he pulled up all these different pictures of drinks brands. They could have all been the same brand. None of them looked different. They didn't have
All
that
in the
stand out.
trend.
Yeah, they just all merge into one. And I think it's having that courage and conviction in your own product or service to know what you are unique and you are different about and being confident about speaking about that. I think that's the bit for us that really sets brands apart and makes them different.
That's such a good message. Don't follow the trend. It's not going to help you.
No.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's difficult. I do get, because brands and building that brand world, so much of that includes social media. And there definitely is space for jumping on some of the latest trends and that, but that's short lived. That's, you do it, it's done. That is not, the products and the services that we're working on are about building long term brand. And one of the things we talk about, we've just been certified B Corp. And one of the things that we talk about is we are not building brands for landfill. We are not building brands that are do this and make money and then be done. We're talking about building brands that actually are sustainable and are continuing and have that long-serving legacy. And we're really lucky. A lot of the clients that we work with have been clients for a very long time, which is just great. It's really good.
So let's touch on brand for smaller businesses. You mentioned Volvo, and I often use Coca-Cola as an example when I'm talking to businesses. You don't have the budget of Coca-Cola. So what does a startup or a scaling up business, an SME, need to do to how do they create a brand on a smaller budget?
So actually, really interestingly, we ran a brand workshop last week with Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce. And we had around that table 12 different people from different organizations, a lot of whom were SMEs. So this feels very relevant. And I'm like, oh, I can do this off pat. But I think it's for them, it's understanding their audience. So first and foremost, it's understanding your audience and what is the problem that you are solving for your customer. So what is that problem that you're solving and why do they want to purchase your product or service over and above someone else's? And I think it's really understanding that and then looking at who you are as a business, as in, who are you for? And also, what do you want to say about that product? So is it that you are looking at, you're for innovators? Or are you for people who are caring or looking at that different side of things and then really working out what it is you want to say and also where you want to say it? And yes, there's businesses like you say, Coca-Cola, Volvo, organizations who have more money to spend on media. But in this day and age, you also don't need to have that. You can have really accessible ways to get media where I was mentioning sort of social media before, but also just getting that message out there can be in multiple different platforms. We'll be very similar to other creative agencies who, when you're looking at getting that message out there, you work with a media agency or you work with, certainly for the SME side of things, you will give them suggestions about what they could do. You can buy certain bits of media for not that much money as well. But it's making sure that it's not a vanity project. I've had clients in the past who might be like, well, I really want a radio ad. And you're like, but who are you trying to target? Because actually, the specific audience that you're trying to target and you can work out how to get to that specific audience. If you're doing a radio ad, that's trying to go out to this wider group of which a huge amount will not be interested. So actually, it's making sure that you're not doing it for vanity's sake to say, oh, we're on this big media platform. But actually, if you know exactly who you're trying to chat to, then that's what you do. And I guess as an example of that, in the past, I worked on a project with Young Scot when I was at my previous agency, and it was along with the Scottish government. And it was for not a very nice subject for child sexual exploitation. And we were trying to target teenagers to basically tell them about grooming, to warn them about what to look out for, to encourage them to look out for their friends as well. And Young Scot at the time had a new Snapchat channel, and we had 20,000 young people on that Snapchat channel, 98% of whom watched 2 days of live clips, which made it look like it was a young person who was actually sending those snaps to their friends. So we did the advert as a live 12-part series over 2 days where it was filmed live. And the engagement and the interaction we got with those young people was phenomenal. Now, that was the purpose of that, was to get that exact target audience. Now, if we'd done a radio ad or we'd done something else, those young people wouldn't have engaged with it. So it's working out exactly what the way to capture your customers is. And obviously now with digital, with social, even things like I've seen a lot of kind of YouTube adverts where you can actually go onto YouTube and you can pick, if you're a business or a finance business, you can actually select and say, who is within this area, has these interests, and watches finance YouTube channels. And you can actually do that specifically for not very much money. So it's basically trying to look at it sort of horses for courses, but making sure you're not doing it for the sake of it.
Who are they? Where are they? And how are they likely to consume content that you would put out?
Yes, definitely. Sorry, I gave
I
a
wouldn't
way
see.
long-winded answer than that, Brenda.
No, I was just checking that I'd got the
Yeah.
gist of what you were saying, because I'm thinking Snapchat. That's a great example, because I would have no idea
Yeah.
where to even find or how to use Snap, but
Mhm.
that target market, where say that's where they are. Yeah.
That's probably quite a dated reference, if I'm honest. But yeah, I think there's definitely, it's making sure that you're meeting your customers where they are and you're doing your research to find out what kind of media they consume so that they will get your message.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really good. Really great learnings for the audience. So thank you very much for that. Now I want to move on to Jen.
Okay.
Yeah, tell me. So you're managing director at
Yep.
Studio LR. What's been your journey to get there?
So actually, I very recently had to talk about my journey because I went back to Dundee Uni, which is where I studied, and I gave a guest lecture to the students there. So I had to properly revisit. So when I was at school, I'll be honest, when I was 16, I absolutely would have believed I would be running a company one day. Was quite a precocious teenager, I would say. I loved sort of organizing things, leading projects, coming up with ideas. And I had big ambitions and a strong sense that I wanted to make things happen. But somewhere along the way, life takes over and careers develop in unexpected directions. Responsibilities grow, and sometimes you lose sight of the things that make you feel most yourself. So becoming managing director of Studio LR doesn't feel like I've arrived somewhere unexpected, but it feels more like I've come full circle and found my way back.
So it's taken you a while to get there.
Yes, it's definitely taken me a while to get there. But I guess the original question that you asked was about my journey. I grew up in a very creative family. So creativity was everywhere. My parents both studied at Edinburgh Art College. So from a young age, I was surrounded by people making, designing, building, creating. And I acknowledge that's a really privileged position to be in. So after school, I did a year in an American high school, which is an entire podcast in itself. And then I went to Leith School of Art, which I am now a board member of. I'm a board trustee there. And then I went on to study at Duncan of Jordanston in Dundee, which the kids now call DJ CAD. While I was there, I started working for Red Bull as a student marketeer. So I used to have the car with a can on the back. After uni, I was like, what am I going to do? And Red Bull said, we're looking for full-time people if you want to join here. I didn't quite say that. I did have to go through an interview process. But after uni, I got offered that full-time role. And I remember on my first day, it was another guy called Dave who I was working with at the time. Him and I were handed our laptops, our phones, and a company car and told to go and get Red Bull into the supermarkets. So this was the early 2000s. And it had a bar call, but it wasn't sold in supermarkets at the time. So we were, how do we do that? And they said, I don't know, you tell us. And I guess that was kind of no roadmap, no instructions, just trust and empowerment. And looking back, that was probably my first lesson in kind of leadership and entrepreneurship. So no one's going to tell you what to do. You have to step forward, take responsibility and kind of work it. And I always say that entrepreneurial spirit has stayed with me throughout my career. So that was the sort of starting point. But I worked for the Scottish distributors up here because Scotland is such a unique market with Iron Brew and the soft drink and the sweet tooth that we have. It was very different. And in 2007, just before the financial crash, Red Bull UK brought everything back down south. So unless you wanted to move to London, our roles were made redundant. So I took that opportunity to say, what do I want to do? And my role was sales and trade marketing. And the marketing bit is the bit I enjoyed the most. I kind of decided that I wanted to go into advertising. I did a year of made redundant of anything and everything. I was handing out flyers outside the train station. I was babysitting. I was doing all that. And I did a stint at the Union advertising agency for 3 months where I worked on a project and I chapped on lots of doors. But really interestingly, one of the people I babysat for, one of their relatives worked at the Leith Agency and they were like, oh, you should speak to him. And I did. And then I managed to get in the door and have that conversation, and then had a conversation with someone else at the Leith Agency, and then had another conversation, and eventually got a full-time role. And I ended up there for 16 years, which was fantastic and such a good organization, and just really, I absolutely loved it. And when I was there, I did 2.5 years working at the Scottish Government on secondment. So that was in 2012 to 2014. Some of the projects that there were incredible, promoting Scotland's brand identity across the world, including London Olympics, Commonwealth Games, and then doing a lot of national campaigns, so behaviour change. And I returned to the agency after my secondment for another 10 years. And then I feel like I need to take a breath. But then a couple of years ago, I found myself asking that question, what's next? I'd been at Leith for 16 years and I knew I wanted to grow and keep learning. And at the same time, I'd spent years helping other people build brands and maybe neglecting some of the things that really energized me. So it's funny how things work out. I went back to the easel and did a drawing and painting class. And that really interestingly took me back to what I'd loved when I was a kid. And it gave me a bit more clarity. And that's actually when I applied for the board trustee role at Leith School of Art and went back into my old art school, and which spells exactly the same as it did 26 years before. And it just reminded me who I was. And I had a really good opportunity at that same time. I went on secondment to Scottish Rugby, loved working there. The team there were fantastic. And I worked with a brilliant head of marketing who, again, really empowered me to make happen. And one of my favorite phrases is shy bairns getting out. And I just really took that mantra and ran with it. And we had autumn games that we were looking at making sure we had sold as many tickets as possible. And I worked with media agencies. That's a really good example, going back to the media side of things, where they don't have huge budgets, but contacting the media agency and working with the media agency to try and do kind of small bits of media placement, or working with Lothian buses or the trams, and just doing those kind of really good sort of benefiting kind of deals. And yeah, it was great. So being at Scottish Rugby, I think, gave me a real palate cleanser as well. It took me away from agency life. It really gave me an opportunity to think, what do I want? And at that time, Andy Gray and Lucy Richards, who are the founders and owners of Studio LR, Lucy is the LR in Studio, they approached me about running their independent creative agency, having that succession planning in place. They're not going anywhere yet, but they were forward looking. And yeah, it was something that felt like things really did come full circle. And really interestingly, when I was 15, I did work experience at Taburn, an advertising agency in Edinburgh, and Andy and Lucy were at Taburn at the time. So it's done that full circular moment. And what was lovely is when Andy and Lucy approached me, it was a woman who I used to work with, who, it wasn't the right time for her. She had quite a young child, but she had said, do you know who you should speak to? And she gave my name. And one of the things that Dave, our director of strategy and creative, mentions a lot, he doesn't hold him up as a hero, but he mentions Jeff Bezos, because Jeff Bezos talks about your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I think that goes for personal branding as well. And that was a really good example, firstly, of that personal brand, because Andy and Lucy then asked around about me and they were like, we got good feedback about you. And I was like, I'm glad to hear it. But I think it's also about that fact that you have to have that, not just that good brand, but you have to be able to be like right place at the right time. And just, they were looking for somebody to lead the next phase of their business. Had I not done those things earlier on in that year, would I have been in that right place when I would have jumped at the opportunity? I think sometimes, and I do firmly believe it was the catalyst of going back to the easel and getting back to something that I loved and reminding myself of who I was, that it gave me that confidence to go for it.
Awesome. Yeah. So we use the term like, there's no such thing as luck. It's where preparedness meets opportunity. And that opportunity came to you when you were prepared for it.
100%. I've never heard that before. That's great. That's really good.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah. They brought you on to be managing director when you hadn't run a business before.
No.
Okay, so tell me about that then. Has that been a bit of a learning curve?
Massively, it's been a learning curve. I think one of my other favorite phrases that I use a lot is what got me here is not going to get me there. And I have learned a lot about leadership in the last 18 months. But what I also would say is leadership starts a lot earlier. You are a leader in multiple different roles. You're just a different type of leader. You might not be the person at the top of the company, but you are leading in lots of different ways. So I do think my previous role as a group account director was a lot about delivering of the work, whereas that isn't something that I do now. I said to somebody not long ago, in my first year at Studio LR, I probably did 5% of what I did the previous year. But it was such a different thing. But what I was very conscious of when I was coming into my role, and I'm so grateful to Andy and Lucy that they supported me in this, I said to them, I've never been a managing director before. I need some form of mentoring or coaching. I need some form of peer group that I can go to and I can speak to and I can ask for advice. And they supported me in being able to do that. And that has been so valuable. You've met me for what, half an hour. I'm a chatty Cassie. I need to have people to bounce things off. And the big difference, I think, within leadership is it can be a really lonely place. And you can't turn to certain team members and be like, what about that? Or can't believe you have to keep certain things in. Now, I am a very authentic, open book, but there's certain things that happen within a business that as the leadership team, you need to deal with. So yeah, so I'm really glad that I had that opportunity and I have gotten a huge amount out of being coached as well. You know, I think it is that way where for Andy and Lucy, they wanted that fresh energy and that kind of different perspective while still respecting what they built. And they've got a really strong reputation. They're really talented people. And also they're very values led. So they weren't looking for someone to reinvent the business. They were looking for someone to lead it into its next chapter. So I guess that has to be a specific type of person. And for me, that it felt aligned. The business, as I said, already had values that I believed in. They're independent, they're creative, and they're very people focused. So yeah, I could see myself in it. And it felt taking a job and more like stepping into something that I genuinely wanted to build rather than I was very conscious as well when I started. I didn't want to come in with my size 6 shoes and kind of be like, this is what I think should happen. It's understanding more about the business from the inside. And my head of design says to this day, the best thing I ever did is when I came in, I took each individual person for coffee. So they all got to pick the coffee shop and that became a bit competitive. But they got to pick their coffee shop and we went and I did fika, which is the Swedish kind of coffee and cake. And I asked them, about who they are, about what their background was, about who they were in their personal life. And obviously they could share as much or as little as they wanted. But then as a leader, being able to understand who it was that you had working for you and what made them
What
tick.
drives them. Yeah.
So I think that was really important.
How have you had to change?
How have I had to change? I think one of the biggest things, if I was really candid, is when I was in my previous agency, I'd been there for a long time and I'm a really sociable person. So in an organization where there's, say, 2,535 people, there's quite a lot of people who'll go out to the pub and chat and you'll sit round and you'll talk a lot about work. And I would be the person who would be senior, not in the leadership team, but would be senior, who would come back and say, these are the things that people are concerned about, or I think we need to address certain issues, or this is what I've picked up from coffee machine chat or in the pub chat, and I would be taking those concerns to the leadership team and leaving it with them and kind of going, this is for you to solve. You need to
I
now
found a
solve
problem.
this.
Here you go.
Exactly. And I think that is a really important thing to have within your culture and your organization. What I would like to hope now is that my team know that they all can come and speak to me. They don't need a representative. But I am now in that position where if there are challenges or there are concerns, I'm the one who people are having the conversation with, but I need to solve it. And I need to be able to have that sort of way of kind of addressing it. And that is definitely something that I find challenging, in that I'm used to being in the trenches with everybody and working alongside everybody on projects and really knowing and observing and being that person. But now, because you are running the business and you've got that overarching view and you're empowering your team to be able to do that, it's not knowing everything, but knowing that you need to be aware and solve those problems, have those solutions.
So just remind me, how long have you been in the role then?
So I've been in the role 18 months.
Okay. So it's still early days, really.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's I think the reality for me is that, I don't know, what am I trying to say? I think that I think there's definitely the things that have surprised me most are the kind of the leadership being lonely. And actually, I think it was interesting at the top of this conversation, you talked about what you're trying to build as far as this community. And community is one of my values.
Mine
Community
too.
means a huge amount to me. I love bouncing ideas, talking things through, and it's building that network around you that's been really important. But I think one of my biggest leadership lessons is definitely been that no decision is still a decision. Like, as a leader, you don't often have the luxury of sitting on things for as long as you'd like. And you have to make the best decision you can with the information that you have at the time. And I'm a perfectionist. I'm also a people pleaser. That's what client services people are. That's what I've been trained to do. So learning to embrace that imperfect action has definitely been a real growth area for me.
Action. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of at the beginning of each year, I actually have sort of 6 things that I write as far as my clear sort of mantra for the kind of year. So imperfect action is one of those. Conviction is another. And leading my ship is right up there at the top. But also kind of create and innovate, and vulnerability also sometimes being a strength. And I think that goes back to the imperfect action that, not, yes, you have to have the answers, but actually you have to have the answers based on the information you have at that time. And you're not always going to make the right decisions, but you need to make a decision to make sure that you go forward.
Yeah. I love it. Imperfect action. Done is better than perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I do think you were saying about, I am very aware and very humbled by the fact that I'm right at the beginning of my journey. And I've been really lucky to have peer mentoring from people who have been in business a lot longer than I have. And I also have Andy and Lucy there, who are the founders and owners who've been running their business for 22 years. But what I would say is I'm really grateful that I'm coming into my role and this position now, particularly, I think, from a female leader point of view. That's one thing that I think has been one of my favorite surprises about coming into this is how supportive other women are. And I grew up with women who are 10 to 15 years older than me, who to get ahead in business had to behave like men
Yeah.
and were very masculine minded and weren't, I couldn't see myself in them. Whereas now that I've come into this position, for example, I started my role and 2 months later, I met a woman at an event who said, "Oh, I should introduce you to this other person. They have a WhatsApp group that's for agency female leaders." And at the time when I joined, there was 24 in that group. I think there's now 53 on that WhatsApp. And she's done a couple of meetups as well. And because we're agency leaders, we are all competing against each other. There'll be
Yeah.
certain pitches we're all going for. But the things that get talked about in that are, has anyone got a good lawyer for this? What accountants do people use? I've got someone who's on jury duty or got a jury duty letter. What do I do about that? Or what do I do about just actually how do you run your business?
Yeah.
And I really strongly believe in supporting each other and collaboration and making a bigger table, like bringing as many people into that community and into that fold as possible. And just knowing that not having that bravado, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing yourself to kind of speak more freely to each other and to support each other. Because I think that if we can grow a bigger pie, then there's a piece for kind of for everyone.
I love that. Really love that. Tell me, tell the audience actually, because you told me already, the little rebrand that you did for yourself when you became MD. I think I think it's really a lovely little story.
So I was telling Brenda before we came on, she was just checking by what first name I go by because my LinkedIn profile is Jennie Landels. And professionally at Studio LR, when I became MD, I started using Jen, which my friends found very entertaining. And I got a lot of jibing about because the fact that I was going to work for a brand campaigns agency and run a brand campaigns agency, and I'd felt the need to rebrand myself. And I said, Jen just sounded a bit more professional in my mind. Whereas Jennie, because I spell it with an IE, sounded like I draw a heart above the I, to which one of my friends went, because that's what you used to do. And I did indeed in that point, probably with a pink fluffy pen a la Clueless time. And that's exactly what I did. So yeah, I think it's just it's really dialing up and looking at who you are and who you want to be and what matters to you. And I think that is something within leadership that it is becoming so important to be very clear about what your values are, about what's important to you, and how you communicate yourself to those around you. There's a lot of things I'm obviously still working on as far as this rebrand. Brevity is clearly not my strong point, as probably demonstrated in this podcast. And I'm definitely someone who thinks by speaking, but I don't want to ever be someone who tries to be somebody I'm not. But I want to be someone who knows how to dial up the best parts of myself so that I can lead a really strong business and give the people within my organization and within my community what they need.
I've been working with my coach actually. There's a group of us work with Bruce, and we've been talking about the identity of the successful person that we're aiming for. And Yeah, clearly that's what the Jennie thing is, just a small part of that identity of the successful managing director of Studio LR.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we could go even deeper on it. And something that I feel really strongly about and I do quite a lot on is mental health. And I have a therapist that I go and see and I get a lot out of that. And there's definitely something about my late dad was Jen Landels. And there's definitely if you analyzed it too much, there's definitely something about the Jen and the Jim because he was an architect and he's somebody who my sister and I, his legacy is the things that he taught my sister and I. And a lot of that is about business and about values. And he is the probably the growing up the biggest feminist that I was around, which I think is phenomenal. And I think that there's definitely something perhaps as a kind of a nod to him if you were to analyze it a little bit deeper. But yeah, definitely.
So there's a question I often ask, and I'm not going to ask you because we're running out of time, but who's been your biggest supporter? And I'm just thinking there, that sounds like your dad's still a
Yeah.
big supporter.
Yeah, definitely. I think my sister and I often say, and for friends, we lost my dad 16 years ago. And really sadly, I have a lot of friends who are now going through similar, where parents are passing away. And the one thing I would say is that their legacy doesn't go with them. And that's very much with my dad. There's a lot of times that I think back to conversations that my sister and I had with him or how he approached business and how he looked at things. And one of the projects we're working on at the moment is the National Centre for Music at Carlton Hill in Edinburgh. And it's where my dad went to high school. And it's also when he was alive, he was trying to get it turned into a national photography centre. But unfortunately, it eluded him in his lifetime. And it's now been turned into a National Centre for Music. And when that project came over my desk last year as a pitch, I was like, this one, we're going for this one.
Another full circle moment.
Another full circle moment. And I'm delighted that the team are working on that now. So we have a brand name and identity, and that will all come out later in the year. But being able to go into that building, and the last time I was there was with my dad. And also the agency there's a lot of really musical people in the agency. So it was a good fit from that side of things as well. But I think it is that way. You're talking there about being really clear about who you are. And I think it's knowing about who you are, what you're passionate about, and what matters to you, and making sure that's the life you build.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything that I should have asked you, Jen, that I haven't asked? Anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of stuff I'm doing at the moment because we've just got B Corp accreditation where we're talking a lot about building businesses that are for purpose, not just for profit. And there's a lot that I could speak on that. But I think it's been really nice to reflect on my own journey and to think about that. And I guess the one thing I would say, having listened to other podcasts in your series, is as women, I think we're so much more capable than we realize. I think there's so much more that we can do where we can step forward. And one of the things that I use a lot as a tool, there's a photograph I have of a horse tethered to a plastic chair. You know, the ones that sit outside a lot of foreign kind of cafes and things like that. And the horse has got its bridle on, it's tied to the plastic chair, and it doesn't move because it believes that it's tethered and it's stuck. And I think I was like that horse, and I think a lot of women do that as well, where we think we're stuck, but it's our own lack of self-belief that's holding us back. So that's the only thing I would, add in.
That's the perfect ending. It's come up a few times in a number of conversations I've had this week. And yeah, I don't know about any of the audience, but it's exactly what I needed to hear. So, Jen, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it. It was lovely to chat to you.
So, only 1 in 3 UK entrepreneurs are female, and men are 5 times more likely to scale past £1 million in turnover than women. When we match them will add £250 billion to the UK economy and create millions of jobs. So that's why Scale Her Up exists, to change those numbers one business at a time. Thanks for listening today. If this episode helped you, please follow the show, leave a review and share it with another female business owner who needs to hear it. Join our Scale Her Up Facebook community and connect with me, Brenda Hector, on social media. I love hearing which episodes resonate with you. You're capable of more than you think. Keep going. We're scaling up together.